Good afternoon. Before I take questions from the media today, I would like to acknowledge what is happening in Ukraine. We're shocked and horrified by what we're seeing. The invasion by Russia is completely unfathomable. It's endangering the lives of the Ukrainian people and flies in the face of international law. There are more than 9,000 people of Ukrainian heritage living in Nova Scotia. I know right now they are worried, upset, and concerned about their loved ones, and I want them to know that we stand with the people of Ukraine and we support Canada taking additional action to stop Russia's unwarranted aggression. Thank you. Happy to take some questions.
I'll take questions from the room first before moving to the reporters on Zoom. Go ahead.
Tuesday, you issued a statement critical or pushing the Mass Casualty Commission to give the power to cross-examine to the families of the victims. Have you heard anything back from the Commission on that?
No, thank you, Tim, for the question on that important issue. So I issued a statement really amplifying, echoing the concerns that I've heard from a number of family members on a number of issues, but all which kind of point to two main things. One is the families feel left in the dark by a number of things, and that's something that was not necessary and we shouldn't be happening. And the other was just some concerns about the lack of clarity around some kind of procedural issues, like the completeness of the witness list, like questions, will there be an opportunity to cross-examine witnesses, those types of questions. So I haven't heard back directly from the Commission, but I have heard that there's been some movement on specifically on the issue of cross-examination, that there's some optimism that will be possible where it's necessary. But really just my intent was just to we should never lose sight of the purpose of this inquiry, and we should never lose sight of the need to hold the family close at the center, the families close at the center of this. There's time to address concerns, and I hope they are, and it seems like they may be, some of them at least.
Tuesday afternoon, one of the commissioners very adamantly said that your statement was inappropriate, that they're an independent commission, and it was political interference. No response to that?
I just disagree with it. I mean, what I would say is absolutely it's an independent inquiry, no question whatsoever on that. But certainly concerns were raised by family members. I think respecting the family members is critical to this process. It's incredibly important in this process. So when those concerns are raised by family members, they should be taken serious by every single one of us. Every Canadian should be concerned when by those. So if the family members lose confidence in the process, how can the public have confidence in the process? So number one, when they raise concerns, I personally listen carefully, and I think others should as well. In addition, I have my own concerns. Raising those concerns was important to me, even if it might have offended some others. It was important to me and necessary because there are concerns that should be addressed. And raising the concerns, and at that point in time is that's the time to raise them. Not when it's over, and could have, should have, would have. Like right now, this can be addressed, and it should be, and I hope it is.
Prior to your issuing that statement, did you have any conversations with Tara Miller about that?
No.
She's one of the lawyers at this inquiry. Have you talked to her prior to this at all? No conversations, no.
Not about the inquiry, no.
There's criticism that the first 2 days at the Commission were rather bland and milquetoast, and that it indicates that maybe something of a whitewash in the works. Are you concerned that the Commission may not be doing what's required of it?
No, the terms of reference are very clear, and I'm hopeful, like everyone, and believe that the terms of reference will be fulfilled, and that means getting answers to those questions that can be answered. We should not shy away as a society from answering them, because the answers can lead to improved public safety, and that's at the root cause of this. But But for me, it's let's not lose sight of the people at the center of this, and that's the families. So raising those concerns around them being left in the dark and around some of the procedural things, there's lots of opportunity and time to make sure that we get to the right place on this.
Premier, I just want to ask you on the point we talked about the other day, the fact that I asked you whether you were concerned whether you might have undermined the commission before you even got a chance to get going. You said you had concerns, and you reiterated that again today. But the fact remains, you are the premier of a province, you are a politician, and this is an independent inquiry. There's probably a lot of Nova Scotians running around thinking that this thing is a whitewash, as Mr. Bousquet said already. What's your message to those people?
My message, I am the premier. I'm also a human being. I'm also somebody who marched with the families and advocated beside them for this very thing, for a full inquiry, independent inquiry, comprehensive, honest. You may remember at the time that the government of the day was suggesting a review, which would have been a lesser standard. I added my voice to those pushing for an inquiry. I think an inquiry is the appropriate thing, and there's lots of heartache and lots of emotions and lots of time to get to the answers, and it is my hope and belief that we can do that.
Do you have confidence that they are going to do that?
Yeah, I do.
Premier, the CEO of Nova Scotia Power told the legislature committee this week that he does have a plan B to the Atlantic Loop, that they have alternative ideas of how to proceed to get off coal, but he declined to talk about them at all. I'm just wondering, have you've been helpful with the company, you've worked with them to try to promote the idea of the Atlantic Loop, but have you been told of a plan B?
It's not something that we've discussed in detail, but I mean, look, the whole purpose for the Atlantic Loop is to green the grid and look for more renewables on the grid. So Atlantic Loop is one way to do that. There's been lots of discussion in the province about solar. I believe solar has a role to play in that, and there'll be more wind on the grid. There's all kinds of ways that we can green the grid, and we'll continue to do that. My only interest is protecting the ratepayers of the province. I'm completely focused on protecting the ratepayers of the province. So the Atlantic Loop is a significant project, and I believe that the federal government understands the urgency of reaching a conclusion on that as a way forward. I believe that the federal government shares my concern for protecting the ratepayers to the extent possible. So we're aligned on those things. So that's the direction that we're proceeding. If it becomes the case that that's not a viable alternative for whatever route, then there'll be a lot of discussions to be had about what Plan B, Plan C, Plan D might be. But I would suspect that the Nova Scotia Power, as a sophisticated entity, does have Plan Bs and Plan Cs, but it's not something I've discussed in detail with them.
What impact will it have on power rates in Nova Scotia if Nova Scotia Power doesn't get the $2 billion it's asking for from the feds?
Yeah, well, the only way I'd answer that is I would say it could be a significant impact. So that's not a scenario that I guess it's one that I'm concerned about, I'd say.
Just if I could ask one more thing about Nova Scotia Power. Obviously, weeks ago you had a lot to say about solar. You also said that you'd be bringing some legislation in the spring. I'm wondering if you could talk a bit more, now that some time has passed, what sort of legislation are you looking at? Will it go beyond just dealing with the solar issue?
I mean, these are discussions, and there's the file that's quite active, I would say, right now. So again, I would just say on this topic that my only concern is protecting the ratepayers of this province. That's my sole focus. So I believe that the experience with the solar issue has caused a lot of people to look at the relationship between Nova Scotians and the utility, and that there are a number of aspects of that relationship which I personally feel need to be rebalanced, and those are discussions that we'll continue to have.
Two weeks ago.
Just make sure that Nova Scotians are protected and treated fairly by the utility.
Premier, 2 weeks ago you sat in the exact same spot you're sitting now and laid out what was a slow, methodical move towards lifting restrictions, and that plan included keeping masks for the foreseeable future. I just wondered, given what happened yesterday, what happened in the last 2 weeks that kind of changed your mind on the original plan?
No, I don't think it's about changing my mind, and I think there's still lots of people that would say that the plan from yesterday is still slow and methodical. There'll be lots of people that would still say it's too slow and too methodical, but I do take the point that for some people it's too fast, and I respect their anxiety and nervousness and also share it as well. But so for some it's too fast, for some it's too slow, but what we do is we look at the data in front of us. I personally listen to public health. I think public health has led us through 2 years of the pandemic in pretty good fashion, and they've certainly earned my trust and respect, and I think the trust and respect of Nova Scotians. So when they say this is the way forward and can keep Nova Scotians safe, I listen carefully, and that's the plan we rolled out yesterday.
Was it public health that suggested the mask mandate should be lifted?
Look, all these things are, public health comes with recommendations. We have a discussion about them. I ask questions. There's always, my team asks questions. Public health asks questions to me, and it's an effort that happens. It's the way most decisions should be reached is with discussion. But public health is the ones that have, through 3 premiers. I think we've been blessed in this province that we've had elected premiers, elected officials that have respected the advice of public health. I think that's served Nova Scotians well, and that hasn't changed.
Just to be clear, though, did public health recommend the changes that you brought in yesterday?
Yes.
We do have to move to questions on Zoom now, but we can come back to the room if there's time. Let's start with Frank Campbell with the Chronicle Herald. Go ahead, Frank.
Hello, Premier. Yeah, with the lifting of restrictions and people being encouraged to stay home if they're sick, will government be mandating that employees provide paid sick days going forward?
No, thank you, Frank. So yeah, I mean, of course, if people are sick, they should stay home. If they're symptomatic, they should stay home. I think that'll be one of the one of the positive things that maybe come out of the pandemic, because we tend to think of ourselves as a sign of strength to not feel great but still go to work and still go to there's some kind of a feeling that we've developed over time, and I think now that's been put into focus that it's not appropriate. If you're sick, stay home. That's the best way to protect people. So yes, certainly if you're sick, stay home. But what I would say is there's a provincial program that supports sick time. That program is in place until at least the end of March. There's also a federal program that can kind of layer on top of that. That's in effect at least until sometime in May, I believe. But across many jurisdictions, there's discussions about what paid sick time looks like going forward. But in this province, for right now, I mean, we have that program till the end of March, and then the federal program, and people should encourage people to stay home when they're sick.
Frank, do you have a follow-up question?
I do. Unrelated. An open letter was sent to you last week from 60 plus individuals and groups representing tens of thousands of Nova Scotians on behalf of people with disabilities seeking equal access to social assistance. And at the Human Rights Board of Inquiry, legal counsel for the province said that institutionalization is basically discriminatory. Just wondering if you and your government will commit to meeting with those affected to create a solution to the systemic problem.
I mean, sure. I mean, the issue of housing specifically, we're of course willing to meet with anyone to talk about that. We've reached out with some. We've met with previous Minister McFarland and myself met with some advocates on this particular file. And we made an offer that maybe we get a little committee of sorts together to talk about it. So absolutely meeting and moving these things forward. But I also want to, I can't state it enough that we're very active. We want people to have housing. We want to address the issues that are before us. We'll continue to do that. That in my mind separate and distinct from the legal issues. I do think that as a government, it's incumbent upon us to clarify the court ruling. I do not think it's appropriate to compare the amount of time it takes to find somebody housing, which can be very complex and focused on communities and supports and safety of people. I don't think it's appropriate to compare the amount of time that it would take to find somebody housing to the amount of time it would take to write them a check for a different social assistance program. So I think those things are different. That's the reason for the appeal. But of course, as a government, we'll continue to move the file forward to make sure that we can get people the housing they need just as quickly as they need it.
Next, we'll go to Alicia Drost with Global. Go ahead, Alicia.
Thank you. Premier, there's a class action or a proposed class action lawsuit against the government on behalf of those on the wait list for disability support programs. I'm just wondering what you make of this suit.
I mean, I guess what I would say is similar to my comments there. It's just that look, there's a lot of files that as a government we're moving forward on. And one is making sure that people have timely, appropriate access to government services, including housing. So to the extent that there's a suit against the province, I mean, that will be a legal matter for the courts to decide. But as Premier of the province, I just say I feel very strongly the obligation to make sure the government provides services to people in a timely and appropriate fashion.
Alicia, do you have a follow-up question?
I do. Just going back to the paid sick time, you said that a lot of jurisdictions are having these discussions, but you didn't actually clarify if your government is having these discussions and looking at potentially implementing something after March or after May when the federal benefits kind of stop.
There's at this time there's no it's not something that we're looking at doing, but we'll continue to have discussions and look at feedback, listen to feedback and look at reports, but at this time that's not something that we're contemplating.
We have time to go to one more reporter. We'll go to Jonathan McGinnis with CTV. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, thank you for taking the question. Mr. Premier, is there any concern that going to weekly reporting of COVID numbers can leave people kind of in the dark about the amount of COVID in the communities and thereby perhaps not giving them the information they need to make their own personal decision on how to cope with COVID?
No.
Jonathan, do you have a follow-up question? Is it possible to expand on that at all?
No, it's look, COVID zero is not a reality right now. It just maybe someday it will be, but it's not right now. So I think with 2 years of living through a pandemic and learning about COVID and understanding what people can do to keep themselves safe, people have tools to make decisions to keep themselves safe. And we encourage them to use it. And if people want to continue to mask, that's totally okay. And take other steps to keep their distance limit their social circles, completely okay. There'll be lots of people that do that. I think people have the knowledge and the tools more so now than they did 2 years ago to keep themselves safe. So I think that it's when we listen to the guidance of public health, and follow that guidance, we can all stay safer, and I think people have those tools.
Can I just to be crystal clear on this issue, public health recommended the acceleration of the time frame. They, according, I want to make sure that I'm hearing you correctly. They did recommend all the measures that were put forward yesterday by your government.
Yeah. Like, what's the other side of that? Are you implying there's another side?
I just want to be clear that that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's the way that we've always operated with public health, and it's my understanding that it's the way that it's operated for 2 years through 3 premiers. They come with their recommendations. We have a discussion about them. Sometimes we sleep on them. We revisit them on a constant basis. I mean, the discussions around COVID are ongoing. There's a lot of effort and focus on the management of COVID in the province, but absolutely, when we present something, it's the recommendation of public health.
On that aspect, yesterday you said that there's still no decision yet on the mandate for health workers to be vaccinated. Are you going to be lifting that, do you think? And if so, is there going to be a path back to work for people who refuse to be vaccinated?
Yeah, so there's still work being done on the return to work for people as to how that kind of unfolds. What I would say is there are higher risk areas, long-term care, public health, that we need to focus on a little differently. So we'll come to those conclusions, but specifically in terms of the delivery of healthcare, I have a lot of concerns about that. That will be treated differently than other areas, and it's not new for people that work in healthcare to have a slate of vaccinations. I mean, this is something that's been around for a long time. You need to have certain vaccinations to work in healthcare. I believe, and these discussions are going on, but my personal belief is that we will see the COVID vaccines added to the list of existing vaccines that you would need for healthcare for higher risk areas. But I mean, there are discussions that are happening. So there'll be people returning to work in different fields and different settings, and but there's a subset around there on higher risk areas that we'll look at and has to be treated a little differently, and healthcare would be one of them.
Thank you, Premier. That's all the time we have. Sorry.
The UARB head is leaving, Peter Gurnham. I just wonder if you had anything to say about his departure and when you will replace him.
Yeah, so what I would say is I would thank Peter for his incredible service to the UARB. The UARB does very, very important work on behalf of Nova Scotians that impact Nova Scotians very directly in power rates and all kinds of other issues. So I thank Peter for his service to the province, and I thank the UARB for the work they do, and the replacement will come pretty quick.
Thank you, Premier.
Okay, thanks everyone.